Good morning and welcome to Shelf Indulgence Book Chats. I have with me today Steffanie Williams. Steffanie is she homeschooled her 3 daughters for 18 years. She has a published book, Ew, You Homeschool? I love that title. She wrote it to encourage other homeschool moms. Steffanie currently teaches literature and composition at a hybrid school. Fellow hybrid homeschooler, I love it. In her spare time, she loves to read and write, spend time on the lake, and cook great food. You are a woman after my own heart. She has been married to her dear husband, David, for 34 years, and they have 3 daughters, 2 sons-in-law, and 2 grandchildren. Together with them is their favorite place to be. Welcome, Steffanie. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. So much of your book I related to, but from the serious to the silly, it just touched on every facet that we face, that trepidation when someone, whether or not you're going to tell someone that you homeschool, or if they ask, why are your kids out in the middle of the day? Just because you needed to pick up broccoli at the grocery store. A little bit less of it here in the DFW area, but it was a question you faced quite a bit early on.
It certainly was. I started back in what? I don't even remember now. The early 2000s. It's been so long, but the early 2000s. I think 2003 actually. And yes, I had so much backlash. Yes, I really did, and I speak of it in my book. But my family. I came from a public school background, public school teachers, public school teacher friends. I was a public school teacher, so everybody thought we were crazy. And truthfully, I wondered at the beginning, what am I doing? But oh, great. I'm so thankful that we did it. I'm so thankful.
Yes, if you can get past that fear, we're never going back.
Exactly.
We're never going back.
We're never going back. And we took it year by year. So for a couple years we would say, okay, we're going to just do this for a year and we're going to see what happens. And we stopped saying that. After about 3 or 4 years, we stopped saying that. We were on board and we were going to just see it through. And I always want to tell people, stand firm in what you believe. And if you feel called, because it is a calling, homeschool is a calling. If you feel called to homeschool, stand firm and know you're doing what's best for your children. I mean, think about it. What's better than a mom pouring into her children, her child?
Yes. There is no greater calling and no greater purpose. I think of it almost as a form of apologetics in a way, if you think about it.
It's very true. It's very true. One of my greatest accomplishments, I feel, in homeschooling, and I wish I would have done it with my older 2, there's 12 years difference between my oldest and my youngest. So we had our first 2 children just 3 years apart, and then our Mary Ruth came along 12 years later. And when I homeschooled her, we read through the Bible. We would choose a book of the Bible and we would read. And eventually, after, I think it was about 4 years, it took us about 4 years to know that we had accomplished that, and that she had that in her heart. And looking back, that was my greatest accomplishment, pouring that into her. Much more than the academics and everything else. And we'll still once in a while, she'll say, remember when we read through the Bible? And it's just so heartwarming to hear her say that.
That is the greatest accomplishment, I think. And that is something that I can relate to. And I feel as strongly about as well. If I don't teach him, the rest of it you'll get to. You're going to circle through history tons of times in your life. Same with science. But, and yes, we do the basics. We get it all done. But the most important thing that I teach him, you can look, they walk around with computers on your hands. You can look up anything these days. The most important thing you teach them is how to view the world and how to defend their faith.
Exactly.
And that's their foundation. That is the biggest foundation of everything that I teach him. What is it I read? Most recently, 2/3 of Christian adolescents leave the faith when they start college. 2/3. 2/3. That's the latest statistics.
It is so alarming. It really is. And I think that it's so important as Christian parents that we we truly live what we believe, and we live it out in front of
Yes.
them. And, they see our flaws. That's something, and I say this in the book, my kids know me. They know the good, they know the bad,
Mhm.
but they know me. And
Mhm.
they know that at the end of the day, we want to live for Jesus, and we want to do the best. We want to do that the best way we can through what His Word tells us, and 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 that even when we fail, we get back up and we keep going and we keep trying. And I think that's part of the problem with these young people. They fail. We all fail. They're going to fail,
Mhm.
and they're going out into a hard world. But some of them aren't getting back up.
Mhm.
They're giving up. And so I think for us to be able to share with our kids, get back up, do the hard work, it goes a long way. And I know now I have 3 adult children, and I see the struggles. They've all gone through struggles. We all go through struggles, but they've gotten
Yes.
back up, and they've never turned their backs. They know to whom they believe and what they believe.
Mhm.
And it's wonderful to see. It's wonderful to see them live that out.
Yes, a phrase that I use for that in our homeschool is, "I want you to know whose you are," and it's
I
far more
love it.
important than who you are.
I love it.
So bigger than that.
I
Yes,
love that.
struggle is not suffering. Struggling doesn't have to be suffering. Suffering's optional, but struggle builds character, and that's what we want for our kids more than anything.
We
More
do.
than
We
anything.
do.
What inspired you to write this wonderful book?
Well, after 18 years of homeschooling, the 3 girls, I started writing. I had written some things throughout the years, just I journal. I love to journal. And so I'd written some
Mhm.
things, and then when Mary Ruth was going into her junior year of high school, I just started writing a lot more. And then senior year a lot more, and it actually coincided with COVID. So we were home a lot. We were part of Classical Conversations, homeschool program, and so we weren't able to go there. Actually, we did some online, but anyway, we were home a lot. So I started editing what I had written, put it all together. It had originally had originally thought it would be a parenting book, but then I thought, oh, I'm not really an expert parenting. I mean, I'm just doing the best I
It
can.
it it kind of is. It's great.
Thank you, thank you. But homeschooling, you know what? I've done it for 18 years. I
Mhm.
do sort of know a
Mhm.
little bit about it. So I turned it into that, and it was all God. It was Kimberly. When you look at
Mhm.
something and you truly, I hold the book and I truly look at it and think, I didn't do that. I don't think I did that. God God gave me
Mhm.
that. He really did.
Yeah.
And even the editing process was amazing because you might be able to tell in this interview, but I can chase rabbit holes and I'm all over the place sometimes. I have to really pull myself back in. I'm this
Mhm.
literature teacher and this writer who just loves to just delve into all kinds of things. So, but my
Mhm.
husband, my sweet, dear husband, is this detailed, wonderful man who read what I wrote and sat on the couch quietly, and I was like, does he not like it? And after a little bit, because he's very wise and he thinks before he speaks, after a while he said, you know what? There's sometimes in your chapter that I have to look back and see what the chapter title is because I'm not really sure. And he would, and
Mhm.
it was such a sweet criticism as far as he made me realize, okay, I'm getting off topic. So I took it back from him and I got back on the computer and I thought about that and I worked on that for months trying to, really make sure that my chapters, you know, went together and I wasn't going off on tangents.
Mhm.
And so then I let him read it again and he was quiet again. And I thought, oh no. And he said, you have something here. You have something that's going to help people. And I
Mhm.
said, praise God. And so I prayed about a publisher and it all came together. And so again, I was inspired by my family, by the experience of homeschooling and really sort of just sort of a healthy thing for me as I was transitioning out of homeschooling my girls, because it was a sad time for me. I loved having all three
Mhm.
girls at home and doing school
Yes.
with them, you know? And so it was
Mhm.
sort of a healthy way for me to write about that, and then have something else to do. I can focus on, now talking to other homeschoolers, and all the connections that my book has brought has just been a huge blessing. So that's sort of what happened.
Sounds like you made excellent use of your time during COVID because it bore amazing fruit. Not taking away from there was a lot that went on during COVID that was very distressing, disheartening by all means, but count it all joy because it did.
Exactly.
You brought something out of it very prosperous and very. It bore good fruit. It bore
Thank you.
good
Thank
fruit
you,
that
Kimberly.
now is going to fill into others. So I'm glad you did it.
I'm so glad you said that. It warms my heart when people say that. And I've had people reach out to me, and one of my favorite things that people say is, "I feel like I'm sitting down talking to you." And
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. They say I feel like I know you. I feel like I'm having a conversation with you. And that makes me so happy. And also, of course, I wanted to uplift and encourage. That's that was my
Mhm.
main goal in writing it, was to uplift and encourage others, and help people know I can do this. I can do this.
For me, that's what you accomplished. I wish I had had that back when I had all the questions and the fears and everything. This is our 5th year as homeschoolers. So my son did a private kinder and a private pre-K, and then I signed him up for 1st grade and panicked and said, I can't take him. I can't do this. This feels wrong. Not just the, weird, I can't let go of my baby thing. This feels wrong to send my child away from me. So I wish I'd have had that then. I think we all have to go through that struggle just a little bit in the beginning, but to have had such, you're very relatable in the book, and you lay it all out there. You lay yourself very bare and open and honest, and that sends across the message of pure genuineness, and I think that's what makes it so relatable.
Oh, thank you. That makes my heart happy. I think about what you just said about, feeling the struggle of when you wonder, should I send my child? You were thinking to 1st grade. That's how I started homeschooling. Our daughter, I was an elementary school librarian where my older two went to school in elementary school, and my oldest was going to middle school, and we just had such a heavy heart about it. We were just, what
Yeah.
should we do, what should we do? And we were praying, such a heavy heart, and we brought her home. That's how we started homeschooling.
Mhm. I think it's, I have a very dear friend, Jody Ellis, who runs Serve Homeschool Outreach in Louisiana. And she has the most amazing wit. But she'll say to me, that's just God nudging you. And he's a gentleman. He'll nudge you a couple
I
of
love
times.
that.
But that's the
Oh,
Holy Spirit nudging you. And so I'm like, okay. She's like, it's okay. You can tell him no, but he's patient. He'll come
I
back to you and
love
continue to
that.
nudge you until you walk in faith and obedience. But I get that. You felt that same nudge. And it's more than just the
Did.
jitters. It was, no, there's something here, and I need to listen to the Holy Spirit that's trying to move me.
Exactly. Exactly.
I found your book to be both inspiring and informative. And one of the things that you touched on was dispelling many of the common myths, and there are so many, that goes along with being homeschoolers. Can you speak to one or two of your favorites that you would like to kind of challenge? Because we do have to it's more like apologetics, where we have to kind of come in and defend, if you will, or dispel those myths about homeschooling.
Yes, and the big one. You know which one I'm going to start with is the S word, and I call it the silly,
Oh,
S for silly, the socialization
true.
issue.
Mm-hmm.
If I had $1 for every time someone said something to me about socialization, I'd have a
Mm-hmm.
lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
socialization. it- You know, we really need to be serious and think about this. I mean, we learn to get along in our own families. I've always told my girls, if you can't get along with one another, how do you expect to get along with the rest of the world?
True.
Ch- Homeschoolers are with various ages. I know with our girls, they were in activity days and co-ops where it wasn't just sometimes just a class of 12-year-olds. It might be 10 to 15
Mm-hmm.
year olds or whatever age. So they learn to get along with, and I love when I see the older kids interacting and helping the little ones. They're just,
Yeah.
it's just so heartwarming. And so they learn so many wonderful things. And for me personally, all three of my girls, I early on, had a lot of criticism. Didn't have
Mhm.
family on board with what we were doing, some of our family. But you know what? They came on board when they saw results. It took years, but they came on board. And and some of them are my biggest advocates right now. So it's really wonderful. But my girls, and just because they've done what they've done doesn't make them successful. Who they are in the Lord is what's important. But for me, for our family, for our personal story, all three of my girls are our first one was a television news reporter. So that's pretty social. And she was a news reporter on or on the news for 4 years. And then she
Yeah.
wanted to stay home because it's a hard job with children. She was on the news every night. And so
Mm.
she's home with her own social media business. Our middle daughter was a theater major. I just got to watch her and all exactly. We just got to see her
She's
this
not
weekend.
socialized at all.
Exactly. We got to see her this weekend. Oliver the musical. She's up there singing on stage and she's the theater major, and our youngest is a violin performance major, and she plays in front of hundreds of people. So I can definitely dispel the socialization myth with my own personal stories, and we
Mm.
all can, honestly, we all can, because our children certainly get along and do well in the world, especially if they're standing on the foundation of Jesus Christ and know who's he or
Yeah.
she they are. And so I never, please, if you're listening to this and you're starting out and you're wondering about socialization, please stop. Stop worrying about that. They
Mhm.
have so many opportunities within your family, and then whatever outreach you want to do. I haven't spoken to ministries. I mean, you might go to the local homeless shelter, or there are so many things you can do as a family to reach out and service and help other people. And what a wonderful opportunity for your child or for your children. You know, I haven't spoken to this yet either, and it just popped into my head, but homeschooling gives you so much time, and your children get to explore things that they love and things that they want to do. I mentioned our youngest is a violin performance major in college right now. She would have never had the time to explore and
Mhm.
play her violin. She started at the age of
Mhm.
10. She fell in love with it, and she practiced. We live in Virginia, and we took her to lessons at the University of North Carolina, which is 2 hours away. And we drove her every Tuesday. She had her lesson, we had lunch, and we came home. We did that for 2 years, and she practiced for hours. Never would have had an opportunity to do that had she
Mhm.
been in public school. And I could tell other stories. All of our daughters have had so many opportunities that have just opened doors for them in adulthood. Even something as simple as my oldest daughter loved to quilt, and she took a little quilting class with a homeschool group, and that's how she started. And so now she still can sew and do all of these wonderful things that her mother can't do at all. So she had the opportunity to do those things. The other thing I want to speak to is, you don't have to have a teaching degree.
No.
You do not, and you don't even have to have a college degree, believe it or not. It's true, to homeschool. If you have the desire to learn alongside your child, that is what's important. I learned more homeschooling my three girls than I ever learned in my years of education. Right, exactly. I learned so much and had so much fun learning it.
Yeah.
Either learning something new, or learning it for the second time or the third time. I
Mm.
loved it. So please don't feel inadequate if that is you, because God equips and enables those of us who have the heart to pour into our children.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. And you don't have to do it in your own strength either. You can do it in
No,
his.
in his
Mhm.
strength. And you know what? He gives you opportunities. I'm terrible at math. I'm terrible. I'm an English major. I love, and so math is not easy for me. But I married a man who went through calculus 4. So my husband took over math at algebra 2. I'm not good at science either. But I had a group of wonderful ladies in our co-op who loved science and who every week took our girls, our older 2 girls, and did science and labs with them. So
Mhm.
there are outsourcing. If you live near a local university, you really need to reach out because sometimes they love homeschoolers to come in and do different things within the university.
Mhm, mhm.
Libraries, there's I mentioned co-ops and if you don't have one nearby, talk to some ladies that start something, do the science labs together, or there's just a lot of those kind of things where God gives you ideas to reach out to other people and have that part of the community, have that community as well.
Yes, you don't have to do it all yourself. Create that community. And if
Hmm.
there's not one, create one.
Hmm.
And there's such comfort in community. Yes, you don't have to know it. You're never going to anyway. Learn
No, and
as you go.
exactly, and it's a wonderful lesson. Isn't it a wonderful lesson for our children when you learn alongside them and you say, I don't know that either. Let's research that. Or, you know, you're interested in that. It's just a wonderful learning opportunity for them as well to see you learning alongside them and admitting that you don't know everything.
Yes, absolutely. One of that we use so many phrases in our house because I love words. That's my strength. My husband he's an engineer, so he does the math and he'll blow up the kitchen and clean it up. But I'm fine with that. I mean, I like watching it. That's cool, but I don't want to do it.
That's
So
me.
I'm grateful that he will. I pay someone to teach math. It is what it is, and that's okay.
That is
But
great.
I know my strengths and I know how to surround myself with people who know more than I do, and that's okay. But one of our phrases is always learning, always growing, and we are
We
from alpha
are.
to omega, and that is okay. Be okay with that. Be
I
okay with
love that.
that.
Yes, I love that.
In your book, you give so many different practical tips as well, from scheduling and organization. And sometimes it can seem quite overwhelming if you don't know where to start, if you don't have a plan. You don't really need a plan. But there are some simple tips and tricks that can help your day flow better, even if those things change over time. What are some of your favorite tips and tricks that you use for scheduling or organization to help things flow?
Well, I am a huge scheduler. So, I tell people, you have to be self-reflective, and you have to realize what kind of
Hmm.
person you are first of all. You need to know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I've known successful homeschoolers who don't have a set schedule, or but
Hmm.
for me, that would be a catastrophe to me. I want to have a schedule, so
Right.
my children knew that we
Hmm.
started the day around, it depended, 8:30, quarter till 9. We would start our day. We would be up and ready. Didn't speak about this in the myths part about my youngest daughter, but one of the myths that she dispelled, she did not like it. And if you homeschool in your pajamas, good for you. But in our family, it really bothered my daughter when people would say, "Do you wear your pajamas all day?" And it would just make her so mad because she likes to get up. She gets up, she gets ready, and she's ready for the day. And she's always been like that. And so that really bothered
Hmm.
her. And so she would say, "Mom, why do people ask me that?" And I said, "Well, some people that might be what they do, and that's fine, but I know that bothers you."
It is.
So we were
Hmm.
always ready to go. And so we would start and we would always read our Bible and pray first, because to me, that's the key to your successful day right
Hmm.
there.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
hope I'm not
Set the
jumping ahead
tone.
to something.
Hmm.
It is. And I hope I'm not jumping ahead
Mm-mm.
to something you're going
No.
to ask me, but I had to get up earlier than my children from little up, because if I don't have time
Hmm.
with my Bible and with my Jesus calling and with my daily bread and with my prayer journal,
Hmm.
my day falls apart very quickly. So that set the tone, and then I'd set the tone with my girls, and then we would be on a schedule. And I was a little more lax as the years went on, thankfully for those poor kids, because at first I was just like a drill sergeant, and they were like, "Mom, please." But I liked to, we did the harder subjects first. We always tackled math, and they'd go to their dad when they
Hmm.
were older and doing their math, and then we would do science and so on. And then we'd always break for an hour and a half for lunch. We'd always have that nice break. And then in the afternoon, we'd do whatever, literature, history, a foreign language. And so that was important to me, to be scheduled. I incorporated their thoughts in the schedule. When they were older, we would sit and we would have this little session where I'd ask for the girls' input, and we would make the schedule. We would also always start the end of August, the 1st of September, and we would always finish the beginning of May. Or sometimes maybe as late as May 12th, but we would always finish. I have friends, they're very successful and love year-round homeschooling, and that's wonderful. If it works for you, whatever works for you, that's the flexibility and the wonderful part, one of the wonderful parts of homeschooling. You do what works for you. For me,
Mhm.
we worked hard knowing that we were off all summer. We wanted that summer off. That was just a break for us, and we just really wanted that. And so we worked hard during the year, and we would work every day. We would usually take a half a day off a week, or sometimes a Friday off. It depended on, again, the flexibility, what we were doing. So the schedule was important to me. Some other tips is I make a I plan my meals every week. Even to this day, when my kids are gone, I do weekly meal prep. I know I write it on it. I'm old school. I have this spiral notebook I write down, and I know what I'm fixing every
Mhm.
day of the week. And I go to the grocery store one time, and maybe twice if I forget something, but I try to stick to especially when the kids were home. We went once a week to the grocery store, and I bought whatever it was for that week. And also, I think it helps to have certain nights, like, people talk about Taco Tuesday. We would always make
Yes.
homemade pizzas on Friday nights,
Mhm.
things like that, because that helps, so you're not thinking every
It
week, what am
does.
I going to cook?
Yeah.
Monday was always crock pot. Whatever it was in the crock pot on Mondays. So that really helped me with meal prep and with
Mhm.
my time, not running to the grocery store all the
Mhm.
time. When the kids were little, I had so many baskets. I would go around the house and put everything in baskets. They'd play and have fun, but it would go into the basket at the end of the day. We didn't have a homeschool room. For those of you who do, I'm so thankful you do, but we didn't. We didn't have a home with a homeschool room.
Mhm.
So we always homeschooled at our kitchen table or at our dining room table. So we had a homeschool closet. So at the end of the day, it was just all packed up and put into the homeschool closet. I like organization. And so for me, my house has to be, I don't want you to walk in and think looks like a museum. I want it to feel lived in, but things have
Mhm.
their place, and it has to be put away. It's just who I am. I function better when to me that's calming. So again, you have to realize your
Mhm.
personality. So, so at the end of the day, it pretty much needs to be in its spot. So those are some ideas. I can't really think of. I know I wrote of others in the book. I'm not thinking of
It's
them right
okay.
now. But I just think it's important that you realize what works for you and you stick to it. It makes me sad when I talk to people that say, we are so behind. We are struggling so much. We have such a hard time getting started with school. Or that's what I'll ask them. I'll say, okay, what time do you start school? And they'll say, we're lucky to start at 11 o'clock. Everybody likes to sleep late. And I think we just really need to do the hard things and think about that, because
Mhm.
that's a lot of hours already gone in the day, and you're already
Mhm.
behind. And so, or maybe that could work for you if you worked into the evening.
Mhm.
But you do have to put in the hard work, or
Mhm.
you are going to be behind. And I don't want
Mhm.
anyone to think that homeschooling. We know homeschooling's hard work. It is. We're pouring into our kids, and we're doing the hard work. I'm going to tell you all, it pays off hugely. It pays off hugely. I get the blessing of hindsight. I mean, I have a 32-year-old, a 29-year-old, and a 20-year-old. I get to see the fruits of the labor, and I get to see how they've succeeded in adulthood. And it's a wonderful thing. And I encourage you all, do the hard work, push, ask for help, pray for help. And the hard days go into months, go into years, and before you know it, you look and you think, wow, wow, we've done it. And with God's help, we've done it. What a great feeling. What a great feeling.
Oh, I don't think there is any greater blessing because it's such an accomplishment. It is. You've poured into your children, and there is no greater blessing.
It's
No
true.
greater
You get to
blessing.
reap you get to reap the benefits. And you
It,
do when you're going through it, you get to reap the benefits of the flexibility and the thinking outside the box and the time with your children. I mean, you have a front row seat to watch your children. That's one of my regrets. My older two, I started homeschooling the oldest in 6th grade, the middle one in fourth grade, and I homeschooled our youngest the entire time. I got to see all of those aha light bulb moments, when she
hmm
started to read and when she gets some kind of concept. I was just, oh, it's just wonderful. And I miss that. I miss that with the first two, but I thankfully got to see it with the third one. And so you get to have all of these blessings throughout the journey. But boy, when you get to have the hindsight and look back and have that time, and you've had that time with your children, when your child goes off out into the world, whether it's to college or whether it's to the workforce or the military, wherever it may be, you'll know what I mean when you think, this is hard, but I've had so many years with them. So that's a blessing in itself to know that you've had that time. Time is so important.
No, it is. And it goes, what is the phrase as it goes? The days are long, but the years are short. And it's so true. I couldn't believe I was saying that we have a fifth grader this year because I'm like, didn't I
Wow.
just start this? Didn't I
I
just?
know.
Where did last year go? Where'd fourth grade go? It feels like a blur. And in your book, you speak about the importance of rest, which is something that as moms, we are
Well,
not always good at doing. We never get to ourselves on the list if we ever make it on the list at all. But it is incredibly, incredibly important that we fill up our own cups before we try to fill up anyone else's. Can you speak to, in your book, I think you used the phrase, much to be said for living an unhurried life. Can you speak to the importance of rest and maybe give some encouragement for into these other homeschool parents and mamas of how to find that rest, even if they're, they've got little littles at home, how to find that rest?
I will. Yes, it's a blessing to live an unhurried life. It was a joke in our family that, uh, especially with my father-in-law, my dear father-in-law, he would say, these kids, if they're in a hurry, you're in trouble. I mean, we did try to live an unhurried life, uh, and that started with, I've mentioned before, but with a restful morning Bible time and prayer and asking for help for that. It 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 manifested itself into this our own schedule. We're in charge of our own schedule, so we would do things that would make things less hurried. For those of you who have kids in sports, or a lot of times you, or whatever you have activities you are part of, you know they're good things, but sometimes you might not be able to do all of the good things. There were times in our lives we used to do something in our family called an eternal significance check. And we would say, is this eternally significant? Does it really matter in the end? And sometimes we'd eliminate things because of that. I know my daughters were ballet dancers, and they loved, my older two, they loved ballet. And they were to the level where they would have to go 4 days a week and Saturday mornings. And we lived 50 minutes away. And as hard as it was, and my oldest cried, we hated it. It was a sad time, but we just said, as for our family, we just cannot make the jump from 2 days a week to 4 and Saturday mornings. We just can't do it. Family life is too important. So, and God bless that, because when she was a senior in high school, she went back and took when she turned 18, there was a little adult class that she could go to one night a week, and she continued ballet for a while and loved it. So she was able to come back for that. But those kind of things are important to reflect. I always talk about self-reflection because it's important to me to always be looking at where I am and where our family is, but to
Mhm.
see if things if it's just too much. Sometimes it's just too much. Now, I also this is funny, but for me, it's hot tea. You ladies, you need to find something that is a special thing for you. For me, it's hot tea. I love hot tea. So just the act of making myself a cup of hot tea in the morning when my kids were at home, I would make that cup of hot tea, and it was so special. It was just a special thing for me. And I do it also in the afternoon. I also am a big advocate for a healthy lifestyle and exercise. So how will I exercise? All of these things are going on in my life. How will I exercise? So you have to ask yourself what works. For me, not going to a gym or going out of the house didn't work. I I couldn't find time. I didn't know when I would do that. So when let's see, oh, it was a long time ago. It was probably soon after I started homeschooling. I bought one of those mini trampolines, those Xer bouncers, and I bounce. I run, jog on that thing. To this day, I do it, and maybe 5 times a week. But guess what? I could do that. I could do that while my kids were playing in the house. I could do that. I can remember bouncing, and they
Mhm.
were they were reading aloud, or they were going over something. I was asking them questions about. I would say, um, tell me about the theme of that book, and I'd be bouncing, and they'd be telling me, and so it worked. It worked in our life.
Mhm.
And then, so my point is, you have to find something that works for you. It might be taking all of the kids on a walk, or you all might go swimming, or whatever it is. You might all go to the gym. I didn't have very athletic. My girls don't care about those kind of things, so we did other things. But whatever. No, mine didn't want to go to the gym. It's
Mhm.
funny though. As adults, they'll go, but as kids, they didn't want to. So you have to
But they
you
were
have to find
dancers,
what.
so
Yes, they were dancers. So you have to find what works for you, because you don't have a lot of time. You're right. And I go back to my organization.
Mm.
If you can do crock pot things, easy dinners. Everybody makes his and her own pizzas. Those kind of things. It's
Mhm.
important. You have to be creative and think of ways that make your life easier, because you have so much on your plate. So I
Mhm.
think thinking of something special, whether it's coffee for you or tea or some kind of treat. I'm big on treats, so I always think of the food or the treats. Exercise. You
Me
know what,
too.
ladies? It was a bath for me. In the evening, my kids and my husband, my sweet husband, would keep them away from the door, but they all knew that mom was in the bathtub for like a good 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and that was every evening. And all of those things helped fuel me and make me feel like I could keep going. So those are just a few of the things. I tried to get outside a lot. We do a lot of outside school. We always were on the patio or in the
Mhm.
yard, or, I think it's important to get out of the house some. So again, just find something that you feel like, I'm doing this little. It might be little, but this is wonderful. That cup of hot tea was just wonderful to me. So those are the kind of things, and I do think you need uh, to look at your schedule and what you're doing. And sometimes we just have to give something up or cut back, and realize that for that season in our life, that's what has to happen. And you could come back to it another time.
That is so very true. That is just the perfect explanation of basically working smarter, not harder. You're not going to
Exactly.
have the Pinterest dinners, and you don't have to. It's okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
Basically, what I'm hearing you say and touching on it, which is so true, is knowing yourself, getting to do that little bit of self inventory of, okay, this works for me. This is less stress for me. Let me pick what's going to work best for me. And in order to be sure, and for your children, it's meeting yourself where you are and meeting your children, because each kid is different in their learning style or in their circadian rhythm, whether they're up in the morning or they're up late, whatever works best for your family. But it's knowing yourself. That's the first part of it. And I think the second part of what I'm hearing is beware the comparison trap of, well, she's doing it this way, so I must be doing it wrong, or I'm not successful at it if I'm not doing it this way. Can you speak to more of that, of your personal needs and how you got to know yourself or getting to know yourself? and how
Well,
that's empowering, really.
it really is. And you hear comparison is a thief of joy, and it's so true. I mean, we just have to be so
It is.
careful that it really is. I mean, we can't compare ourselves, and and it's just we keep saying it, but it's so imperative to get to know what works for you. And I think that is another blessing of homeschooling, because think about it, you have the time with your children, and
Mhm.
you have the flexibility. So see what works for you. Kimberly, you mentioned different learning styles. Even to the point of the curriculum or the different
Mhm.
learning styles. I'll have people ask me about curriculum. That's a big question that I get. People ask me a lot of
Mm.
questions about curriculum. And I tell people, I know it's very overwhelming. I can remember it was extremely overwhelming to me to have all of these curriculum choices. I recommend to people to just concentrate on one at a time. Look at some math curriculums, see what you think. Look at the literature. Look at just one at a time. And so you just have to find what works for you. And you mentioned it, but you might be a night owl. I'm a morning person. I'm not a night owl. You might
Mhm.
be. My friend, I mean, my youngest daughter's friend, she would always be doing her homework really late at night. Mary Ruth would do hers in the morning and a little bit in the afternoon, and then her friend was always doing work at night, and that worked for them. So again, find
Mhm.
what works for your family, but do make sure it works. Do make sure and make
Mhm.
changes if it's
Mhm.
not working.
Absolutely. It's very important. You can't just use it as, I'll be honestly, as an excuse to
It's so
not do.
true. It's so true. And that's another point of being honest with yourself and being self-reflective. Be honest with yourself. I mean,
Mhm.
I know I know the negatives. I know the problems that I can have, so I have to be honest about that. I have to, be honest and, say, and I can tend to be too picky, or too much of, I don't want to say perfectionist, because I'm really not a perfectionist, but I do like things just a certain way. And so I learned a lot of lessons through the years and
Mhm.
realized that, what, it doesn't have to always be the way that I think it should be. And I learned through the years to get more input from my children, and they have great ideas. Your kids have great ideas, and they have some good problem solving
They
skills.
do.
I got to the point where
They do.
my homeschooling evolved into such a beautiful thing by the end, because of all the experience and because of God equipping and enabling and helping me with everything and answered prayers. But I got to the point at the end where I really valued Mary Ruth's input. And I would say sometimes, I don't know how to approach this, or I don't know how we're going to do this. A lot of times she'd have the answer. As a junior or senior in high
I love
school,
that.
they have some great answers.
And that's awesome. You kind of look at your child for a minute and go, "Oh, okay. I
I
like that.
know. I
There's a little bit of
love
me
it.
in there, but I like that." Or, "I hadn't
Don't you love
considered that before."
don't you
I
love
do.
it? And you see it. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Even now, my 10-year-old will come back with something for me. I'm like, "Oh, I should have asked you long ago." Yes, you're 10, but you have your own thoughts, and clearly you haven't made terrible choices thus far. So I need to remember what do you think a little more often. So
I love that, because that makes them feel so valued.
it does. It does. And a lot of times it's not because I don't think he doesn't have value. It's simply we get into the, okay, well, it's so much easier if I just do this, or so much faster if I just,
Exactly.
choose your dinner for you, or what we're doing. But we have to remember as I'm often saying, okay, I'm raising a man, not a boy, and he won't be with me forever. And that is sobering for just a minute,
Yes.
especially when you think of how quickly time passes. And, they will just come out and surprise you with what they know and what you've poured into them thus far when it comes back to you with their little twist on it. But when it comes back to you, go, okay, I'm doing
It's
okay.
wonderful. Yeah, I know you
I'm
can
doing
sit and
okay.
smile.
Yeah.
That's right. You are doing okay.
Yes. I know for many of our listeners or viewers, because this will be on YouTube, some of them, this might be their first year. They might be starting just out in homeschooling. And for many, they may have had, like myself, my husband and I are both products of public education. When I worked as a guidance counselor years ago, I worked in public education. And so either they're starting out as homeschoolers for those first few years, or they might be shifting back from public school into homeschool. And it's quite an adjustment at first to move away from that mindset is about the only word that I can think of to describe it. You also have a background in public education, and you shifted your older two children into homeschooling, shifting from that. So what advice do you have for anyone coming from, and nothing against public education, to each his own, and each family has to decide what works best for them. But homeschool is vastly different, and we don't necessarily have to work within those parameters. What advice do you have from your own experience, professional and personal, to new homeschoolers as they're trying to make that adjustment and make that shift from public school to homeschool?
It is a big shift. It really is. And again, I have hindsight. I would have. I guess I wouldn't change anything because it's our story. As far as everything, I learned and grew, and that's what we're to do. But I started out so regimented and still in that mindset of, 9 to 9:50 was math, and then 10 o'clock to 10:50 was science. I mean, we were literally. I mean, I was setting timers. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty bad. So
Okay.
yes, I was setting timers. My oldest daughter
Oh,
laughs, and
goodness.
she was the guinea pig, and she'll still say, "Mom, those that first year was pretty bad," and I'll say, "Yeah, it was pretty bad." But I had
I
this,
love it.
I had this regimented, we were doing one
Hmm.
subject at a time, and we were finishing. And if you weren't finished, well, you'll just have to finish your work later. And we did that. And I also really taught to the textbook. And I felt like I needed to finish the textbook. It was just so many of those kind of things were important to me. Being in public school, I taught public school, middle school, and high school English. And in public school, having 30 children in a classroom, you're pretty much teaching to the middle of the group. You can't really teach to the
Hmm.
the high and the low because you only have 50 minutes or 45 minutes. And so you're teaching to that middle child, and you're hoping that the lower level kids jump on, and you're hoping that the upper level kids don't get tired of it or whatever, or they already know it. So
They're
it's
bored.
hard.
Hmm.
It's hard. So then I came to, our kitchen table where I just had our oldest daughter, and I wish I would have I do wish I would have had more flexibility and more creativity. I grew into that, and and again, it just every year it got better and better. And I learned, I don't have to finish the entire textbook. I don't have to stop math at 8:50. We can go longer. You guess what? I could even have science only on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or I could just have history. We could just have a big history lesson once or twice a week, or go to the museum, and just so many creative things that came out of those years of homeschooling. And I learned to mix curriculum. I did start out with a Becca. I wanted just a Becca.
Ooh,
And I
that's
like a
tough.
Becca. Yeah, I know. And I like a Becca, but I didn't need to
Mhm.
use a Becca for every subject. And I
Mhm.
ended up doing some different things. So I guess the part about being more creative and more of an outside the box thinker, uh, I had to learn that because as a public school teacher, that especially in a high school English setting, it's sort of squelched because you don't have enough time, and they have the testing where you need to just teach certain things. So, oh, it's
Yes.
terrible. So, you
Mhm.
come from
Mhm.
that, and so it is. I did need to learn the creativity and the flexibility, and so that's what I had to work on. I think coming into it also with too high of expectations, maybe. I had just everything pretty much outlined, yeah,
Mhm.
about this is what we're doing, this is
Mhm.
what's going to happen this year, instead of just realizing that things happen. And um, I learned through the years that my when my kids would like something, they were so interested in something. We just took a lot longer with that. And then when Mary Ruth, our youngest, came along, we just had a lot of fun. I can remember her in
That's
kindergarten,
awesome.
yeah, we just pretty much
Mhm.
played. We made up little songs for days of the week and months of the
Mhm.
year, and we played, and then added a little bit more first grade and a little bit more second grade, and I think I realized that we didn't have to sit for 8 hours a day for
Oh.
school. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
You and people would ask me, as the kids got older, how many hours a day do you do school? And I would say it varies, but there are
It
days when
is.
we might do
Mhm.
4. We might do 4 or
Mhm.
5. We might do 3. And I'd always get that look like, well, then they're not learning anything. But that they learn so much because there's
Mhm.
uninterrupted time. You're not stopping them
Yes.
for disruptions in a classroom. I mean, it's one-on-one. They can get a lot done. They can get a lot done in a morning.
Oh, absolutely. What I heard there was growth. You had so
Mhm.
much growth, and you had a few growing pains to go with it, but it goes with it.
It
It goes
does.
with it, and it just kind of be okay in the midst of it, of the growth. And sometimes that is so hard for us, especially when you have I have a very similar personality.
No.
So, and I mean, they scare you to death when you work in public education. Boy, do they. And I was only a guidance counselor, so I couldn't imagine actually teaching. So, yeah, they scare you to death. They
I know.
really do, for no reason at all. But I won't go off on that rabbit trail for a minute. But you get to pursue the fun rabbit trails. You really do. And what you're really learning is that you're teaching your kids how to have a love of learning in
Exactly.
general. Because if you teach that and you lay that foundation, the rest is gravy. They'll come along and learn how to learn.
They sure will, and
You
if
didn't, yeah, because,
they sure
no,
will.
please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, not every child's a reader, but if you have a
Mm-mm.
reader, they learn so much when they read. And if you don't have a reader, I encourage you to do a lot of audiobooks and read alouds.
Mm-hmm.
Read alouds are so
Mm-hmm.
important, and that's another way that you're just together as a family. I've known families through the years that the father, the dad has been the, has done the read alouds in the evenings, and I think that's really neat. I like that. I like that. My husband's not a read. He is a reader, but just with certain things, he helped me in so many ways. But that just wasn't his thing. I don't think he really that wasn't something he wanted to do, and that's okay because I did it. I
It
love
is.
doing read alouds.
Oh, I do too. It's my favorite. I mean, we are vast readers. My son sort of kind of taught himself to read at 4. He sort of picked up on it, and so
Wow,
we just went with it. So that's how we taught it. Well, I mean, not fully taught, but he started to memorize the books we were reading, and then he started to pick up on he just was a natural reader.
that's wonderful.
But we do read aloud still, and it's kind of funny. My husband is not a reader. If he ever had to read anything for work, I would get an audiobook for the car because I knew that's what he would need if he needed it for management or what have you. But when we do read alouds as a family in the evenings. That's our poetry and tea time did not work. My son's like, I don't really want to do tea time, Mom. I'm like, that's fine. That did not work.
Tried
So
it.
I tried. I'm like, this looks so cool. And then he's like, no, thank you, but I'll take the cookies. I'm like, okay. So instead, we changed. We make it work for us. We do read alouds in the evening. We do that in family board games. That's our big thing. My husband works from home, but that way we reconnect together at the end as a family because Daddy has to have dinner at his desk a lot. So, that's instead of dinner together, that's how we reconnect. But it's kind of funny. We were reading recently through our read alouds for this year, and I was reading the children's version of the illustrated classic, Great Expectations. And my husband says to me,
Wow.
I never read that in high school. And of course, I look to him like he has 3 heads. I'm like, what do you mean you never read this in high school? You were deprived. So I'll read anything. And
Oh,
so,
that's
he
great.
sits there. He heard me reading one night, and he had to work a little late and ran upstairs. And he's like, oh, okay, you're not reading it. And I'm like, what? He's like, well, I didn't want to miss it.
That is awesome. What a great book. That's great. And what a great story.
I'm like, and you're a fan. Please pull up a chair and let's finish
That,
Great Expectations.
that is
And it's a
wonderful.
way to bond as your family. Yes. And now he has read at least or heard the children's version of Great Expectations. But yes, read aloud's another fun way to bond and let go of all
Yes,
those unrealistic expectations that you don't have to meet for public
it is.
school.
It is
Make
so
it
true.
your own.
That's right. Make it your own. You're exactly right.
One of my favorite parts of your book is where you openly share that your patience has been earned over time through faith in God, hard work, and perseverance through trials to pretty much build endurance. Post trials, count it all joy. It's grist for the mill. We have nothing to fear from this world because Christ has overcome this world. But as homeschool moms, we know, I mentioned earlier, the days are long, but the years are short. But there are some of those long days where you either, you can't wait for daddy to get home fast enough, or you can't wait to put them to bed, even if, you're chasing them to bed. And at the end of the day, you kind of just want to stare at a wall and question all of your life choices, including homeschooling. And you and I both know it's just one day, but those days, boy, do they do a number on you. And sometimes there are more than one of those days. There's a couple of them in a row, and those will really kind of kick you when you're down. What advice do you have to share for mamas who may be struggling when those days are longer than a day, when they might even be a season? What do you have to say to those moms?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is put them to bed as early as possible.
I don't care if you're tired, not tired, go stare at the ceiling. I love you.
Please go to bed. Please go to bed.
You have to sleep, but you have to stay in your room.
That's right. I've said that. No, I've said that. I look back and we all have had these days, we've had the hard days. I've had lonely. I remember for me, it was lonely days. We lived out in a rural community and I would feel lonely. And so I would have periods of that. I would have periods of just being tired and just what you've mentioned, just things just weren't going right. And I think it's important for us to realize that that's life, right? That if I
Yes.
were in the corporate world, or if I were back at a public school or wherever life would take you, you're not going to have every day be these great days. So I think sometimes it's just is important to remember that, because I think as moms, we want our family to just be this happy, wonderful, every day, everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
I know I did. It would really bother me if we had bad days, and if I ever raised my voice, I would beat myself up for days about that.
Yes.
I would just beat myself up. Yes, I would beat myself up. And instead of thinking, you know what, I'm just human, I'm just doing the best I can. But so I just encourage people uh, just to take it a day at a time and know that tomorrow is another day and you can start fresh. And we have different seasons. I mean, there's some, unfortunately, we live in this fallen world where we might go through not just a day, but days or weeks. And so just cling even more to God's promises and pray about it, and know that there will be an end in sight to a better day. We know that because our experiences have shown us that. So I will tell a funny story. By the time our youngest was in high school, early high school, because I was still doing math with her before I turned it over to my husband. So it's probably
You're doing
algebra.
better than me.
It was probably pre-algebra, because that's about it's about as far as I could go. It's probably pre-algebra. But we still laugh about it. It was a joke. If I would get frustrated, because I could tell she was frustrated because she wasn't understanding, and I was frustrated because I wasn't being able to teach her well or make it clear, I would grab the vacuum cleaner. I would tell her to work on something else, and I would vacuum. So it became this joke that when mom's mad or mom's upset, the vacuum comes out. And I also hum.
The cleanest carpets that year.
The clown was vacuuming like I was nuts. And it's a joke in our family too, because when something bothers me, I hum, and I did not even realize it. My children pointed it out to me that, Mom, you're humming. So it was a joke that, okay, we need to do something else because Mom's humming. It's like mom's trying to keep it together. So when they're little, I think too, different seasons in our life call us to different things, for solutions. Like when they're little, the best thing that I could do was what you had said earlier: go to your room and play or read. Just go to your room, or put them to bed early. Now, when they're in middle school and high school, that's a different ball game. But by that time,
your room.
Yeah, exactly. I go and close the door and say, "It's true. You it's true. You It is." And but that's the age though where they realize when mom's had enough. And so that was helpful to me because my kids knew, okay, we need to, and my girls would say sometimes, "Mom, what can we do?" And I'd say,
Oh,
and I appreciated that. But so I do think it differs for your the time in your life. But for
mm,
encouragement, I will say, as with anything that we go through in life, it will get better, won't it? I mean, you might have a bad day, you might have a bad 2 days or 3 days, but it will get better. And it may be as simple as saying, you know what, we're going to take tomorrow off and we're going to go to the park, or
yeah.
we're going to go. We've been wanting to go to that whatever, that art gallery or that whatever it is. Um, th- you know, do it. Just take off, and then you'll come back refreshed. You all will, and I think that's important too, to take breaks.
Yeah, exactly. That goes back to the importance of rest, what we
Hmm.
were talking about earlier. And you could almost just schedule in breaks for rest. That's okay, especially if you're not good at getting to it. Because if you're like me, you make a list because you like the list because it's very satisfying to check that thing off the list. And
That's
if you do something that's not on the list, you'll put it on the list just so you can check it off. So
love
I will
the list.
literally put in breaks of rest because it's important. Like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
and that's okay too.
It
That's
sure
okay too.
is. It's very
That
important to
is
do.
such important advice too. It's okay. This is just a moment. This is just a season. You'll come through it, and always remember to go to God because you don't have to do it in your strength. And I think sometimes when I get the most overwhelmed is when I find myself that I've been trying to do it in my own strength. I've not been protecting that prayerful time with God. Maybe I overslept and I just didn't get up in time enough to do it, or I rushed through my Bible study. Protecting that time with Him really sets the tone. Doesn't mean your bad days aren't going to come. They are, and that's
Yeah,
okay. But it reminds you of what's on the other side, and you get
exactly.
through it. And you're
Exactly.
not going through it alone.
That's right.
You speak to one very important component in the book that is so commonplace, and it was for me too. Many moms, dads, families, homeschooling families in general, that even if you're thinking of homeschooling or maybe you're in those initial stages of it, it's facing the backlash of, I call them naysayers or doubters or people who are just curious. Sometimes they're well-meaning, sometimes they are not, who challenge you in wanting what you're going to do basically with your own children. And sometimes it's from a place of love, but still sometimes it can really sting, especially when it comes from the people who are closest to us, close family, close friends. Um, what advice do you have for homeschooling parents who are facing that kind of backlash? What would you say to them?
Well, I'll first say that it's very hurtful when you know you've been called to something, and you start getting excited about it, and
Yeah.
then you have people shoot it down. It's very hurtful. And I had family that really did not understand at all, and were not very supportive at all at the beginning. My parents, they didn't say a whole lot, so they didn't say anything negative, but they didn't say a whole lot. So I wouldn't say they were against it because they knew I was serious, but they just didn't understand.
Yeah.
Um, Other family members, my in-laws, and different people in the family, were vocal about not understanding, and not and why are you doing this? So it is hurtful. But
Yeah.
I just want to encourage you, and hopefully your husband's on board. That was a big blessing for
Hmm.
me because I
Yes.
came to my husband. I haven't told the story yet, but one of the main reasons I started thinking about homeschooling as an option was my kids were at ballet, and there was a ballet mother there that homeschooled her three girls, and we became friends, and I would watch her. And so after a year or two, I started thinking, this is pretty neat what she's doing, because I had
Hmm.
no experience, absolutely no experience with homeschooling back in the early 2000s. And so I started talking to my husband about it. And I said, I'm really beginning to think that maybe this is an option for us. And he's just such an encourager. He always has been. And he said, he said, I don't know anything about it, and it does seem sort of weird to me, but I know you, and if you are serious and you think you can do it, then go for it. And he's just that kind of person, and so to have his support was so important. If I don't know what I would have done truthfully if I didn't have his support. So I guess I should speak to those of you who maybe your husband's not on board. Pray about it. Try to show some success stories or share things that you see that work. Bring a workable plan in front of him, showing him
Yes.
that,
Make
this
a
is what I'm
pitch.
going to, exactly, this is what I'm going to do. This is the curriculum I'm going to use. These are the groups we're going to be a part of. So we're going to have community. That will go a long way. But I think the main thing for me was it was people watching what I was doing and watching the kids, and after a couple years seeing the reality of it's okay. They're
Mhm.
okay. They're actually more than okay. By the time my girls were in high school, oh, my family, they were they're a huge homeschool advocates. I mean, they'll tell anyone, my grandchildren were
Convert.
homeschooled. Yeah, my grandchildren were homeschooled and they did this. Is So
Mhm.
I think sometimes I'm sorry to say, you may just have to wait it out
Mhm.
and see what happens. But I said it earlier, stand firm in your conviction. Know that you're doing what's best for your family. If you feel called,
Mhm.
you're doing what's best for your family. And you're the mom. And you know what?
Mhm.
You're in charge. You're in charge of your kids. Second to what God wants you to
Absolutely.
do, for what He wants you to do for them. You're the one that's making calling the shots for how your child is schooled. Stand firm in that and be proud of that. Be happy. That's what a
Mhm.
blessing that you're in charge of your child's education. Wow. Never take it for granted.
No. And you know what? Full stop. There's nothing else I can say to that because I'm just going to nod agreement in everything that you said. You don't have to make it any more complicated than that. Full stop.
Thanks.
Well, Steffanie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to come and chat with us about your wonderful book and your journey and your testimony. Your book, they can find it at Amazon, correct? That's where I found it.
Yes. It's at
And
Amazon. It's at Target and Walmart, and Christian Book Distributors also has it.
I will put a couple of links to that in our show notes. And I just want to say thank you so much for the message that you've given in your book. You've touched on everything that is just I wish I'd had this book before I started homeschooling because it gives such wonderful encouragement that, it really is going to be okay. And it's very empowering and that you really can do this. So
You can do it.
you are a
You can.
testimony to that.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Kimberly.
Well, we look forward to more good things for you and get back in touch with me if you happen to do any other books in the future. We'd love to have you on again.
Thank you. This has been great.
Well, take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.